happened in the second round of elections was a serious attack against the legal and constitutional order of the country. Gonzalez accused Noboa of the use of public resources, of the delivery of bonuses without technical support, and also made reference to some of the irregularities, such as multiple versions of minutes that were modified by the National Electoral Council itself, without signatures, and some that did not coincide with the number of voters. In this sense, she warned that all these findings would be challenged and contested before the competent authorities in Ecuador.
Quiero comunicar al país y al mundo entero que todos estos
I want to communicate to the country and to the whole world that all these very serious findings will be challenged and contested before the competent authorities, which today, unfortunately, are under the control of those who govern, as well as of all the legal institutions that assist us. This in order to prevent Ecuador from becoming a country without peace, without freedom, without democracy, in the midst of a persecution against those of us who have had the courage to raise our voices and who today have more than 1 million votes scandalously snatched in an unfair, unequal election never seen in our history.
In addition, Gonzalez further denounced the electoral fraud committed by Daniel Noboa after a campaign plagued by irregularities.
Por esta causa, por esta lucha que me impulsa a pensar.
For this cause, for this struggle that impels me to think of the most needy, of the poorest, is that I see myself in the obligation to denounce the serious attack that our country suffers, trampled in its legal and constitutional order. This campaign plagued with irregularities began with the fact that Mr. Noboa campaigned without a license, continued with the seizure of electoral institutions that illegally allowed the indiscriminate use of public resources for an open campaign by the government in office. Millionaire bonds were also delivered without technical analysis as a populist strategy to buy votes, which today puts dollarization at risk, changes of electoral precincts, and last-minute states of exception. In short, we can point out an endless number of infractions committed by those who today have taken power under the fictitious shadow of democracy.
In this regard, national and international organizations and movements have also denounced an electoral fraud in the Ecuadorian elections, demanding a recount of votes by the National Electoral Council. Gabriela Mena brings us more details.
In Ecuador,
political organizations, social movements, and legal groups have denounced electoral fraud, warning about irregularities in the process that gave Noboa the victory. They emphasize that there was a manipulation of minutes and irregular prohibitions to disrespect the will of the Ecuadorian people.
In addition, on this occasion, there was no opportunity for the citizens to photograph the votes, and this, of course, is the result of the distrust that the Ecuadorian people have in their president of the republic. We are living before the state of caprice, and this cannot be given in the legal system.
Point on which several analysts and political organizations agree. From the beginning and after the conclusion of the elections in Ecuador, the citizen revolution rejected the electoral results and denounced fraud, affirming that they did not remain with their arms crossed. But what are the ways that must be complied with to denounce electoral fraud? First, a political actor must present a denunciation before the National Electoral Council. This document must be supported by arguments, photographs, testimonies, and reports that validate the irregularities, and in a period of up to 1 year the ruling can be announced. For the analyst Ramiro Rivadeneira, this would not allow Noboa to be sworn in this May 24th.
It is clear to me that we are dealing with a much more complex fraud than what could exist with respect to the accounting of certain votes. It is not only a question of numbers, it is not only a question of accounts. Behind this there is an accumulation, a lot of edges that have to be analyzed, and from there it is important to open the minutes.
The contentious electoral tribunal, prior to making the proclamation of the official results, must resolve the illegalities committed by Noboa, starting with the lack of request for a license to the National Assembly to initiate the campaign period. He did not entrust the presidency to Veronica Abad. the use of state funds for campaigning, and the declaration of a state of exception just hours before the beginning of the election day.
However, what the court has done to somehow say that it is doing its job is to channel several of these complaints into one. Of these 5, there is still no definitive resolution to tell us what has happened.
Es necesario mencionar que a este cúmulo de ilegalidades
It is necessary to mention that, to this accumulation of illegalities, it has added the implementation of a law by the National Electoral Council and at the same time denied the possibility to Ecuadorians to exercise their right to vote from abroad, in countries such as Venezuela, where Luisa González had a high number of supporters.
All these things make a context in which the final results are bulky. They do not make any statistical sense. In all this context, it seems to me that what is really responsible is that people do question how this type of issues could have occurred.
expertos cuestionan si las autoridades
Experts question whether the authorities will act legitimately without tipping the balance in favor of Noboa and not declaring fraud. And the fact is that unions denounce that Noboa has the powers of the state monopolized.
Gabriela Mena, TeleSUR Ecuador.
In Ecuador, presidential candidate of the Citizens' Revolution movement reiterated that she will contest the results of the elections that gave the victory to President Daniel Noboa. In a video published on Wednesday night in her social networks, she thanked those who supported